all here to hear about the Missoula mayors. We have 25 past Missoula mayors buried here at the cemetery. Their stories are quite interesting and exciting, and we have a wonderful storyteller for you today. We have our own current mayor, Mayor John Engen, who will tell those stories, and I'm sure he probably will pay tribute to a number of mayoral families we have here today too.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mary Ellen. You can hear me okay, I'm assuming? And you can see me okay? Because I worry about that as well. That's terrific. Thank you all for joining us today. I think given the number of stories we have to tell and the fact that it's pretty warm, I probably won't have you trundle up to the cemetery. But you're more than welcome. You can see where folks are, so I think we'll hang around here. Folks can sit and kind of move in and out of the shade as you like. If that works for everybody, we'll stick to that game plan. And again, welcome. The Missoula City Cemetery, some folks don't realize this, the cemetery is a city department. We own it, we operate it, and the good folks here, including Mary Ellen and Jane and our manager Doug and the fine folks on the crew, take care of this historic asset for us, and they do a terrific job, as you can see. And it's a place that I think we ought to have more people visit, just for the very reason you're here today, and that's to learn a little bit more about the place, the community, and how we got where we are today. It's also a great learning experience for me. Those of you who are family members of mayors, you know that the job has some unique demands, but it's also a job where you learn something every day, whether you want to or not. And I learn every day in remarkable ways about people and processes and how to bring folks together to get good things done for the community, and it's really a privilege to serve the community. As I learned more about mayors throughout Missoula's history, it's a familiar thread. These are folks who are pretty relentless do-gooders, and they thought the best way they could do good was to convince enough people to vote for them and put them in a position where they could bring people together for the good of the place. So I've highlighted a few, and we can't hit the details of all of the mayors. If you happen to be a relative of any of these mayors and want to pipe up as I'm going, please do. Don't hesitate to ask questions or interrupt me. And if you'd like to add anything, correct anything, let us know as well. I heard today that we're actually missing a mayor, so we'd like to learn more about that as we proceed. But we'll start with Frank Woody, and like many...
Would you like to move underneath that tree where it's all shaded?
Well, we sure can.
We've had some requests.
You want to do that? So, of course, you have these books, and we'll hit some of the highlights here. So Frank Woody, Missoula's first mayor, also admitted to the Montana bar as the first attorney. So this is how all that started, ladies and gentlemen, was with Mr. Woody. So a couple of other tidbits as you think about some of the names that you hear and see today. Think about driving around Missoula. Woody Street is downtown. City Hall is adjacent to Woody Street, and I suspect there's a reason for that. Mr. Woody, Mayor Woody, became the first mayor and served for 13 months. So today, in the mayor's office, there are no term limits. The term is for 4 years, and if you have the stamina and can get reelected, you can be mayor for life. I'm going to try for term number 2. We'll see how that goes. But Mayor Woody served for 13 months, and importantly, in 1893 was named as the temporary chairman of the university committee. So, and politics pretty much works the same way today, in my experience. The committee lobbied the 1893 legislature for legislation allowing the placement of Montana State University, which is today the University of Montana, a considerable amount of money, whiskey, and 3 different types of cigars by the 25 lobbyists in their efforts. Oddly enough, Missoula is now home to the University of Montana. So I've learned an important political lesson from Mayor Woody in this case. And again, I'm just skipping the occasional mayor, but if you have something about a mayor that you'd like to share that you know, please don't hesitate. Next on my list today, I noted that Mayor Keith, John Martin Keith, who was born in Canada, as were a number of Missoula's mayors, at age 22 came to Missoula and was employed by the Eddie Hammond Company, which later became the Missoula Merc. And as a Missoula native, I'm just old enough to remember the mercantile myself while it was still in operation as the Merc. And to this day, my mom says, I'm going down to the Merc, or the Bon Marché, or the Bon again, or Macy's. So he started, and this is inspiring to me, he started as a clerk, later became the office manager, and then served as a cashier for the Missoula National Bank, and served as a cashier for more than 20 years. And when it was reorganized as First National Bank, he became the vice president and was in charge of the bank's affairs. That's a good spot to be, it appears, because as the first president of the National Bank, he continued to work there for another 17 years and was able to lead the bank into considerable prosperity. He was elected as the 9th mayor in 1891 and served again for 12 months, a short tenure. And the construction of the new St. Francis Church began in 1891. Mayor Keith and Governor Toole at the time attended the laying of the cornerstone for the church. The original church had been built in 1881, but the congregation had outgrown its original building. So if you have a chance and you're downtown, have a look at the cornerstone of St. Francis, and Mayor Keith had been there with the governor at that time. You'll recognize the Toole name. It weaves in and out of Montana politics in pretty marvelous ways. And just another quick and interesting note about Mayor Keith is when he died, he noted in his will that $10,000 was to be set aside for the Holy Spirit parish, and the money was to be applied to the salary of an organist. And I suspect, as a Lutheran who knows a lot of Episcopalians, I imagine that $10,000, there's still money left in that account based on what they're paying the organist. If you happen to be a member of Holy Spirit Parish and want to throw something at me at this time, you're welcome to do so. The other thing I know about mayors is I can't imagine you would have this job without having a sense of humor, so we may have a laugh or two here as well today, folks.
John, can you move a little closer? It's a little hard to hear in the back.
Does this work better at all? Yeah? Okay. And I'll try to keep my voice up, use my best posture, and apply some diction, as they say. So Frank Higgins, who was born in Missoula at Hell's Gate, is the son of one of Missoula's founders, C.P. Higgins, and you certainly recognize the name Higgins. A couple of interesting items about Mayor Higgins. He was a member of the House of Representatives in the first session of the legislature of the newly formed state of Montana. And he continued to serve through the second session in 1891. So the folks who were buying the whiskey and cigars had to give the whiskey and cigars to someone. And it turns out that Mayor Higgins, as he served in the State House, was among those receiving. It was through Mayor Higgins' untiring efforts that the University of Montana was located in Missoula. He introduced the bill to the state legislature that provided for the establishment of the state university right here in our fair city. And he was elected to serve as the 10th mayor of Missoula and served one term. He was also elected lieutenant governor to Governor J.K. Toole and served until 1905. He was originally buried in the Higgins Family Cemetery, which was located on the Higgins family land at the bottom of Patty Canyon in Missoula. And on May 12, 1914, the remains of the Higgins Family Cemetery were disinterred and brought here to the Missoula City Cemetery. and enough land was purchased to bury the bodies being transferred, as well as future generations. So if you have a chance today, when we're done, please wander out there and check out the Higgins family grave. Volume okay? Albert Miles Stevens, I thought was interesting for a number of reasons. In 1891, Mr. Stevens was a horticulture pioneer in Montana. So the more things change, the more things stay the same. We today are considering throughout the West what it means to grow food locally and have food available that doesn't have to be trucked or shipped or brought by train or rail from somewhere else. So the more things change, the more they stay the same. In 1891, Mayor Stevens was deeply interested in the fruit business and encouraged local growers in the development of horticultural products. And he partnered with U.D. Richards to form A.M. Stevens and Company. And the business was a leading fruit shipper in the state of Montana. And due to his tireless efforts and influence, the NP Railway furnished fruit trains for area produce. So not only was the produce here, it was going elsewhere. We were an exporter at that time. He was elected as Missoula's 15th mayor and served for 2 terms and was a staunch Republican.
Is he related to Isaac Stevens?
I have no idea. I don't know. That's something we can research, and I suspect we've got a note taker here so we can ask some additional questions as time goes on. Wondering if this mayor was related to Isaac Stevens. So. Next we have Morris Reese Chew Smith. And I thought Mayor Smith was interesting for a couple of quick reasons. He crafted violins, which I do as well. That's not true. But Mayor Smith did indeed craft violins and was world-renowned, we're told, for his excellent workmanship and tone. He was elected as the 16th mayor of Missoula and served for a reasonably long time by comparison at this time in Missoula's history, for 46 months. And apparently the violin business was good because he did not collect a salary. That was his choice. It's not my choice. And thank you for that. John Evans, who these photos are pretty remarkable, and this is I thought a striking portrait on page 21 of Mayor Evans. Evans among 2 Missoula mayors I'm aware of who served in the United States Congress, and we'll talk about another of those mayors later. But Mayor Evans served from 1912 to 1920 and returned to Congress in 1922 as well. Herbert Wilkinson, I just love the ad that Mayor Wilkinson ran in the, I'm assuming he ran this in the newspaper. This is in, must have been sometime around, he was elected in 1916, so in the 19-teens. H.T. Wilkinson, candidate for mayor. As mayor of Missoula, I have devoted my entire time to the duties of the office and have endeavored to keep the city on a sound financial basis with a tax levy lower than the larger cities of the state. We realize that whatever has been accomplished for the betterment and advancement of Missoula was only made possible by the hearty cooperation of the citizens, and, if successful at the polls on April 3rd, my effort will be to continue to devote my whole time to the business of the city, giving an economical and efficient administration, having in mind always the interests of all citizens and the welfare of the city of Missoula. That ain't bad.
We'll listen for yours next time.
And if he were able to do that, even better. Yes, sir.
Are our tax levies still lower than the larger cities?
I would have to do a little research, but I can almost guarantee that that's the case. Yeah. We are actually, generally speaking, we're lower than most other cities. Yeah.
We're trying to change all that.
Yes, sir, we are. Absolutely. There's always one in the crowd, I tell you. We're actually as long as we're talking about the budget, well, since you asked, we actually, our budget this year calls for, we'll actually levy lower than we did last year, it appears at this time at any rate. So, though it's a bit of a bumpy year. Next is Ralph Arnold. Mayor Arnold served as Missoula's 28th mayor and served for 32 months. And as I read through the biographies of these folks who served as mayor, you start to see how a person working together with the community can make lasting changes that make a real difference. So in 1934, after elected as the 28th mayor of the city of Missoula, Mayor Arnold accomplished a number of improvements to the quality of life in Missoula. Among those, the Orange Street Bridge was built. That's a big deal. Franklin Park on South 10th Street was donated to the city of Missoula, and that's where the city of Missoula had its annual picnic last evening among the splash decks and picnic shelters, and it was a fabulous evening. So thank you to Mayor Arnold for his help with that. And in his final act, of which he was most proud and of which I am ashamed at this time, Mayor Arnold had an ordinance passed to prohibit the sale of intoxicating liquor in dance halls. Missoula's birth rate plummeted for a time. That's not true, and it's not in the book. He resigned early from his term to accept a position as a district court judge, and we have a number of fantastic folks serving in those courtrooms today as well. Again, these folks all devoted to public service in remarkable ways. I've talked to a number of folks today as I go through. I've talked to a number of folks today who knew some of these folks as well. A number of folks knew Mayor Mason and mentioned him. I'd like to spend a little more time with Mayor Gregory, who served as Missoula's 31st mayor, and to date Missoula's only woman mayor. And she has a remarkable biography, a very, very interesting person. Born in San Francisco, and she came to Montana and worked as a social worker for the YWCA, which is a beautiful piece of business, and also worked as a hostess at servicemen camps on naval ships and in military hospitals during the course of World War I. Her husband accepted a job that landed them in Helena, where she worked as a homemaker, and after the Helena earthquake, they moved to Missoula. Nothing shook since. So Mayor Gregory was elected as Missoula's 31st mayor. She got a phone call from Jeanette Rankin, which I find fascinating and remarkable, and made a notable re-entry, as it were, into the workforce. After 22 years, she ran for mayor when she was unable to convince then mayor Dwight Mason to start a city-county planning board. This is why I have an open door policy, ladies and gentlemen. In my office, you never know who might run against you, so you best listen to everybody and try to keep them at least convinced that you're interested in what they have to say, and actually that's pretty easy to do. She couldn't find anybody to run against him. She was so mad, and became Missoula's first and only woman mayor. Her slogan was, "I'm running for mayor of Missoula on a firm, fearless platform with a plan." So she had alliteration on her side as well. She was known as a woman with very strong convictions who wasn't just going to go in there and sit in the mayor's chair, which really kind of messed up the curve for following mayors, and including me. She was going to get things done. So there's a lot of pressure there. Apparently Mayor Gregory was quite direct to the point that when she ran for re-election, she found that she was not successful. But here's what she did. Installed parking meters. That alone may be cause for the loss in the next election. She purchased the first police motorcycles, trained sanitarians to inspect restaurants, bars, markets, and dairies. Those are health inspectors, ladies and gentlemen. Developed parks and purchased playground equipment. hired a recreation director to supervise programs of play and street dances, fired the fire chief for false inspection reports, paved Higgins Avenue, established the bid process for city projects, pushed development of the Missoula Cemetery, purchased sorely needed road equipment, annexed land into the city, and imposed a 6% liquor tax revenue source. Now that I like. Initiated police training programs and added additional street lighting to downtown. So there's not a thing on that list that I ticked off, save the fact that we're no longer getting 6% on liquor sales that isn't at play in Missoula today. So clearly Mayor Gregory, a person of vision, and frankly you don't get this much done probably without stepping on an occasional toe. And I suspect there were some bruised toes around. Mrs. Schaefer nodding in agreement. There were some bruised toes around, but that's a piece of what we do is balance these interests in the community. But you have to move forward somehow, and often moving forward requires you to make sure that everyone is heard, and garner a majority and get some things done. So she's clearly a remarkable soul. Her efforts in the community weren't limited, however, to public office. She was president of the Missoula County Republican Women's Club, and an active volunteer, including a member of the Missoula Chamber of Commerce, the PTA, Daughters of the American Revolution, Business and Professional Women, the Missoula Women's Club, the League of Women Voters, the Red Cross Board, World War II Episcopal Church and St. Hilda's Guilds, Wives of Phi Kappa Psi, Rotary Club Wives, that's before Rotary Club broke down the walls, I'm guessing, Sigma Alpha Epsilon's Minerva Club, the Montana Education Association, Missoula Teachers Association, Missoula County Board of Museums, and was an originator of the Missoula Museum of Art, and chairman of the Missoula Cemetery Board of Trustees for 10 years. And that all just makes me tired. But that's a remarkable commitment to the community. And again, one of the things that makes Missoula great is folks, they sense challenges and opportunities and they chase them with vigor and conviction, and clearly Mayor Gregory did that. Mayor John Toole, later in Mayor Gregory's life, offered an award for civic achievement to Mayor Gregory, stating, "She carried a standard of integrity in her private and public life. She marched into controversial matters with vigor, yet I can remember seeing her in her office, gray with fatigue over the frustrations of the job she held. She's always been on the side of the people who want to do something progressive." Interestingly enough, Mayor Gregory is not interred here at the cemetery, but cared about the place so much that she placed a memorial plaque here on the grounds in honor of her late husband. That reads, "On May 30th, 1971, that friends and neighbors among the mountains may enjoy meditation in these cherished acres. This was given in memory of Horace W. Gregory Sr., 1884 to 1851, by his wife, Juliet M. Gregory." So that's a great piece of business and a great mayor.
Just a quick note, at our Fall Stories and Stones tour, Mayor Gregory actually comes to life, and she's here today. Betty Wing from the Missoula County Attorney's Office portrays Juliet Gregory in the fall.
And Betty does a great job. Did we miss anything, Betty?
Oh, lots.
Yeah? So a great reason to come out here in October, because you can hear Betty and many others bring these folks to life.
John, one of her former students is here, my daughter.
Is that right? No kidding. How was she tough?
Yeah, everybody was scared of her. Not mean, but tough.
Mean, not mean, but tough. And you say everybody was scared of her?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
I was there at the church, and I stayed off any committee.
So for the benefit of all of you, she worked at the church with Mayor Gregory, and she said she stayed off any committee she was on. So, well, that's a very, very interesting person. Yeah.
But one of her parks washed out. John Toole told the story about they made a park down on the island in the river, and the next flood.
What? Yeah.
Juliet's Folly.
What? Juliet's Folly?
Yeah.
Holy cow, there's a lesson to be learned from that as well. West Broadway, is that going to be my deal? That's why I need a second term. We have some relatives of Mayor Starr here today. Ralph Starr. Nice to see you folks. Thank you for coming out. Oh, you're Ralph as well? That's fantastic. Which number on the end?
3.
Ralph the third. Nice to see you here, sir. Thank you for being here.
Just couldn't make it.
I'm sorry?
My dad couldn't make it down today. He's got leukemia.
Oh, bless his heart. I'm sorry to hear that. Well, thank you for being here.
He's 86 and he's still pretty stubborn. If anybody knew him, he's a pretty stubborn guy.
I've got one who's 86. I don't get that stubborn though. I've never seen that in mine. There's no Norwegian in him, is there?
Here's another hand.
Could be.
The one that beat Juliet in the next election.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
Well, we went past Dwight Mason pretty fast, but I'm Dwight's daughter-in-law.
Oh, bless your hearts. Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Mayor Starr was Motorman Justice of the Peace and mayor, and served as the 32nd mayor of Missoula and had a longer term again at 62 months. And at that time, Missoula changed to a commission manager form of government. So today, we're back to the strong mayor form of government, but it's interesting, over time it's gone back and forth, and most large cities in the state today have a city manager, which is similar, a city manager form of government. We had a local government study commission, worked for a couple of years and recommended that we stick with what we have, so that's where we are. So that's interesting to preside as that change takes place. And Mayor Starr did what I think mayors are probably pretty good at, became a vendor for the state retail liquor store in the state of Montana and retired in 1960. So sounds like a life well lived.
Yeah, he had a lot of times he'd bring Indian chiefs from the Salish Kootenai tribe down here, and if anybody was around, you got to see him and the Indian chief. And he was also an honorary chief of the Salish Kootenai tribe. They rode horses in the parade.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I think he's probably one of the last mayors that did ride horses through the parade in Missoula here. Right? Been anybody since.
That's fantastic. When I look at horses, they seem afraid. So that's terrific.
One interesting thing about Mayor Starr, when in 1917, he rode horseback from here all the way to New Mexico and stopped for a room in Nevada, but was kicked out because his last name was Starr, which Bell Starr, which was an outlaw then, kicked out of town. They wouldn't give him a room.
Oh, isn't that interesting? Wow. What's in a name, as they say.
And he drove one of the last streetcars in Missoula into the car barns when they went out of service in the 30s.
Oh, that's remarkable. So here's kind of a piece of that. Everything old is new again. Lots of metropolitan areas today are returning streetcars to their downtown systems, and they've been highly successful. The difference is they cost millions and millions and millions of dollars more than they did when they were first built, and so the chances of us getting that done in an inexpensive way are pretty slim, but it is pretty remarkable. We had those systems right here in Missoula, and you can see some photos. In fact, the biography of Mayor Starr includes an electric streetcar photo in 1910. It was pretty remarkable, pretty remarkably progressive piece of business, and it makes sense today as communities are finding. Wanted to note Mayor Waldbillig, who was elected the 38th mayor, and this is an issue that's near and dear to my heart. While not the most fascinating or sexy piece of business a municipality can engage in, it's one of the most important. Mayor Waldbillig rounded up a $2.6 million bond for construction of the city of Missoula's wastewater treatment plant. So that's a sewage plant that came to pass in 1961. So $2.6 million in 1961. We did an upgrade to the system that wrapped up in about 2005. That construction on just an upgrade cost $18 million. And I know that other cities in the state today are faced with the prospect of building a wastewater treatment plant of their own from scratch, and they're talking about $60 and $70 million to take care of waste. So we're lucky that somebody was thinking about it in 1961 and actually before that. So thank you, Mayor Waldbillig, for that. Next, we have Mayor Shoup, and Mrs. Shoup is here with us today. Thank you for being here. There she is. You found
a granddaughter are here too.
Fantastic. It's nice to see you both. Thank you for being here. Mayor Shoup has a remarkably impressive biography. Served in the United States Army in Europe from 1943 to 46, and went back in 1951 during the Korean War. And upon returning to Missoula in 1954, after working at flour mills in the Agricultural Service Department, Mayor Shoup owned and operated a laundry and dry cleaning business. Mrs. Shoup, where was that?
It was on South Higgins, six something South Higgins.
South Higgins?
Yeah, and that was a temporary part of his life,
Yeah.
you know, because he was looking for something different and something better, and that's when he got into politics.
He found something different, that's for sure, didn't he? Yeah. Sometimes dry cleaning, I think, can be pretty clear cut. Politics, not so much. So.
No, he's not that.
So in 1963, was elected as an alderman to the Missoula City Council, and was elected in 1967 as Missoula's 38th mayor. Ran as a Republican and served for 38 months. And again, you start talking about folks who begin practices that make a long-term difference in the community. And this, again, is one that doesn't sound particularly sexy, and in fact it's one that I get calls about every year. But Mayor Shoup was the driving force behind having us seal our streets. So the chip seal that you see, and the reclamite, as we call it, that we put down on streets, that puts little pieces of gravel in your car and dust in the air and tracks onto your driveways. What that does is, in many cases, it adds about 20 years to the life of a street, which in turn saves you lots of money that you would otherwise have to be spending on asphalt. So again, it's a small step, but it makes a huge difference in the community. Also pushed to have the new city hall built, as the old one had a tendency, and those of you who practice law, this is considered a liability, and what Mayor Shoup engaged in was risk management. The old city hall had a tendency to quote unquote drop bricks on unsuspecting passers-by.
John,
That can be painful.
yes, Doug Chase just missed getting hit by a brick as he was walking by.
And Doug Chase, of course, longtime Missoula police chief, now police chief in Polson, who doesn't have a reputation for missing things when they come his way. So that's interesting. I'll mention that to Chief Chase, remind him of that next time I see him. So Mayor Shoup's inspiring in a number of ways, not the least of which is one of the roles, I think, of mayor is you serve as peacemaker. Part of my job, agree or disagree with your neighbor, but we need to find ways to be respectful of one another and work together toward community solutions. And Mayor Shoup served during a complex and tumultuous time in our nation's history. And in the 1960s, there were protests all over the nation over the Vietnam War, and in this case, in Missoula, Mayor Shoup helped negotiate the release of the ROTC building at the University of Montana when protesters took over the building. And I'll read this verbatim because I think it's pretty compelling. Mayor Shoup was known for his ability to avert conflict. He was credited to a solid belief that it, quote, was all right to disagree, but not to be disagreeable about it. When heavily debated issues were at stake, he took the time to meet individually with citizens, businessmen, and city council members, allowing all parties to be heard. They would discuss issues and possible solutions at great length. This allowed public hearings to run smoothly as solutions were acceptable to all. And that's a remarkably important piece of business. The notion that we can engage in civil discourse and work toward community solutions sometimes gets lost in the fray. And I very much respect Mayor Shoup for his philosophy, and it's these are great words to live by. Another friend, Art Lussey, uses the term, not everybody has to get their way as long as they get their say. And that's a piece of this as well. Folks want to be heard in our community, and that's what this job is all about. And then we make decisions. Okay? In 1971, Mayor Shoup was elected as a representative to the United States House of Representatives and served on the Interstate and Foreign Commerce Committee. Among the major issues he dealt with were the conquest of Cancer Committee, soldiers who were missing in action from the Vietnam War, energy development, and proper labeling of beef products. And if you have a chance, on page 33, you'll see some terrific pictures here. This is a great one of the mayor along with Senator Mike Mansfield and President Nixon at the Libby Dam, and this is in September of 1971, where he assisted the dedication for construction to begin on the Libby Dam, and arrived in Air Force One with President Nixon, Vice President Ford, and Senator Mansfield. Mrs. Shoup, were you on Air Force One?
I certainly was, and it was the thrill of a lifetime.
I suspect. Had to be remarkable.
Yes.
Had to be remarkable. Mayor Shoup was extremely proud and honored to represent the state of Montana in Congress, and was known as an honorable and highly respected man, stood against frivolous spending of government funds, and strongly felt that his job was to represent Montana. Every penny spent, every trip taken, and every issue had to be in the best interest of his home state and totally open for public review. He had a strong base of support, and it saddened him greatly when he lost his re-election due to being a Republican at a time when Watergate was making history. And lastly, I'd like to read one of the favorite mottos of Mayor Shoup, which is, "I believe in the full expression of civil rights and civil liberties, but violation of law must be dealt with fairly and firmly. We will maintain order and uphold the law." All reasonable from a very reasonable and good man. And are there members of the Patterson family here today? We thought we might see some of the Pattersons here today. Mayor John Franklin Patterson, ladies and gentlemen, served on the Missoula City Council and served as its president, and was active on the zoning committee and helped implement residential zoning for the University District, which is interesting, and also assisted in writing ballot initiative for Fort Missoula open space. Mayor Patterson was appointed as Missoula's 43rd mayor and served as mayor for an entire week, ladies and gentlemen, which frankly is all the time it takes to make both friends and enemies in the mayor's office. So it's almost the perfect amount of time to get your sea legs. So later, Mayor George Turman was appointed to finish or to complete Mayor Shoup's term. Mayor Patterson died in 2006 in Kalispell. Loved this particular verse. "Jenny kissed me when we met, jumping from the chair she sat in. Time, you thief, who love to get sweets into your list, put that in. Say I'm weary, say I'm sad, say that health and wealth have missed me. Say I'm growing old, but add, Jenny kissed me." Bill Craig, ladies and gentlemen, and Mayor Craig was serving as mayor when I sort of began to understand that some of this stuff was going on. and that there were mayors and mayors were doing things in our communities. But until I read this biography, I hadn't realized that at one time in his career, Mayor Craig owned the M&M Bar in Butte, which creates all sorts of challenges for me. I need to have some sort of distinctive item in my biography. So I may make a bid on the M&M at some point. We'll have to see how that works. And Mayor Craig's wife, Marilyn Mike, also served with honor on the Missoula City Council. And I haven't seen Mrs. Craig for some time, but Alderwoman Schaefer will, I suspect, suggest that a tough cookie in her own right. Yes? Absolutely. Excuse me. Mayor Craig served as a loan officer and manager at the First National Bank, and resigned later due to a conflict of managerial direction. And at some point I might have to ask Mrs. Craig what that means. I think that could be code for something, I'm not sure. Served a term in the Montana legislature and was an early critic of the Vietnam War. And in 1968 served as chairman for the Eugene McCarthy presidential campaign, and later served as treasurer of the Missoula County Democratic Central Committee. He won numerous awards for his work with young people in Missoula's community. Outstanding Young Men of America by the Missoula Jaycees, Man of the Year by Missoula's Montana Education Association, and the Golden Apple by Montana's Montana Education Association Board. He brainstormed, organized, and directed the initial First National Bank Marathon, and was in the wake of his work at the bank, as I mentioned earlier, owned and operated the M&M, but the bar scene was not to his liking, so he owned Jim Karras Floral for a year in Missoula and settled in as Missoula's 46th mayor in 1977 and served for 78 months. He recognized that the city needed to run as a business and needed to be run in a business-like manner, and did that, and that continues to be our philosophy today. He was also driving force in the first unsuccessful attempt to bring baseball to Missoula. So that was Mayor Craig. Mayor John Toole, I had the privilege of interviewing Mayor Toole when I was a journalism student. So I sat in the mayor's office a long time ago. Little did I know what might happen by sitting there. And the office was actually in a different part of the building at that time, but I remember sort of with a shaky voice asking if I could possibly talk to the mayor. Seems like a much less big deal talking to me than it was talking to John Toole, in no small part because I think Mayor Toole, like many of these folks, was a giant of a human being in Missoula history, and in Mayor Toole's case, Montana history. Mayor Toole was born in Missoula, Montana, a little bit unusual among the mayors we've discussed today, and graduated from Missoula County High School and then attended Georgetown University's School of Foreign Service, also had a degree in economics from the University of Montana, and served in the U.S. Army during World War II. In 1945, in a clever move, founded the insurance and bonding firm of Toole and Easter and served as president. So if you grew up in Missoula, you knew Toole and Easter. You knew where Toole and Easter was, and Toole and Easter in many ways lives on today as the Payne companies, and is still doing business down on Front Street where Mayor Toole and his partners worked. Interesting man, strikes me as somebody who needed to be busy a lot of the time. Dismantled a log cabin on an area ranch log by log and reassembled it on a point of land on Lake Inez. That's pretty remarkable. I can barely disassemble my pen to sign a document most days, so I admire someone with those skills. Played the piano and sometimes entertained the lunchtime crowd at the Old Palace Hotel. I've occasionally entertained crowds at Sean Kelly's for entirely different reasons. Mayor Toole, in 1953, elected to the House of Representatives and was chairman of the Missoula Citizens Committee for Better Government and led successful reform. Mr. Schaefer, were you going to say something? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Also served as chairman of the Citizens Bridge Committee, where he led drives for new bridges over the Clark Fork at Higgins, Madison, and Russell Streets, ladies and gentlemen. I've been working on Russell Street for a little while now myself. We'll see if that turns up in my biography someday along with Mayor Toole. He served as president of the Missoula Chamber of Commerce and the Missoula Kiwanis Club, and was a member of the University of Montana's Council of 50 and served as chairman of the UM School of Business Administrators Advisory Council. Was a director of the Federal Reserve Bank in Minneapolis, and a number of Missoulians have followed in Mayor Toole's footsteps. Pardon me. Served as a board member on First National Bank's board and the community hospital in Mountain Bell as well. Was the first vice president of the Montana Constitutional Convention, a constitution, by the way, that's widely regarded among political scientists as the best in the United States. Was a founder of the Local Government Study Commission in 1976 and served on the planning board, which is arduous duty, and the city park board, and was appointed to the Missoula City Council in 1976. He wrote and published many books. Red Ribbons, the story of Missoula in its newspaper. My friend Jim Bell here will remember that. Among others, The Battle Diary, The Baron, the Logger, The Miner and Me, and Men, Money, Power, and The Rape of the Great Plains. Mayor Toole's brother served as a historian, K. Ross Toole, at the University of Montana, and again is renowned for his theory and treatise on Montana history. And it's a remarkable story of greed and extraction. And if you have a chance, the K. Ross Toole Archives has his lectures available on videotape, and they're utterly fascinating, and you'll learn more about Montana more quickly than you could have possibly have imagined, and there is not a boring second when K. Ross Toole talked about Montana history. Mayor Toole was elected as the 47th mayor of Missoula and served for 25 months. He focused on long-range planning issues such as open space and parkland, and one of his largest issues dealt with the city of Missoula's foiled attempt to take over the Mountain Water Company, and that happens to be the conversation that Mayor Toole and I had when I interviewed him for journalism school. All that was happening at that time, and I asked him why on earth the city of Missoula would want to buy its own water supply. Now I know, ladies and gentlemen, now I know. As the biography here says, the city of Missoula attempted to give its citizens control over their own water system. And another issue that held great importance to him was the option of running a rail line from Missoula through the Bitterroot Valley. He thought this idea held vast potential as a mass transit system for the area. And so again, ladies and gentlemen, not much new under the sun. And $4.06 gas makes a lot of these things look more attractive suddenly. So, you know, I tell folks, my dad's a lot smarter today than he was when I was a teenager. I'm not sure what happened to him, but it all worked out. So that brings us up to date, and I'm not sure how we're doing on time, if I've worn you out yet.
5 till.
5 till, that's almost perfect. I'd be happy to entertain any questions about any of this or anything else for that matter. And you're more than welcome to enjoy your afternoon here, visit the stones. There's lots more history here in the city cemetery, and lots for you all to learn about if you're interested. Thank you very much for your time and attention today. Great to see you all.
Thank you.
But my pleasure. And thanks again to Mary Ellen and Jane and our staff here at the cemetery, who do a great job of not only maintaining the grounds, but giving folks a reason to visit and learn more about this great community. So thanks again. Take care. Keep cool. Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you very much.